we are presenting or anything else, maybe if you could keep it to the question portion of the presentation. Nomfundo and I will go through the activity of the PFI, then we'll take questions before we move on to the AGM formalities. Okay, great. So, I'm going to start off where we left off last year, actually, and these were basically the priorities that we had highlighted that we would be focusing on for the coming 12 months. I announced to everybody last year that the board had taken a decision to commission some research. We had appointed RAND Strategy to look into various other territories to do a review of their regulatory system. We also obviously continue to focus on the regulatory framework of South Africa, and that will always be our priority, especially while we are driving regulatory reform. We also wanted to become more active in the space of non-compliance, as we had seen that there were a number of products that were ending up on shelf that we believed needed to actually be registered according to the regulations. And then we had also announced a potential data gathering project. We had asked Dee come and present. I'll report back on that. And then always we're looking to leverage the activity of the PFI in the marketing space. While that has not been our priority for a number of years, we don't want to miss any opportunities where we can build the PFI name and the brand. So I'm going to start out by taking you through just some highlights of our benchmarking study that we did with RAND Strategy. As I mentioned, we commissioned them to do a review of the international pet food market. Our primary objective was to confirm the appropriateness of the Feed and Pet Food Bill, as well as the specific aspects of that bill to ensure that we are moving in the right path to ensure that we can operate in the global market. We, through their process, they identified 5 different markets. They did that basically looking for markets that use primarily facility licensing as opposed to individual product registration, as well as looking at markets that are similar to South Africa by virtue of them being more developing than developed. So we also wanted to then end up with a library basically that we could access to reference specifics in those regulatory spaces, looking at the global markets, so that we could also, if needed, pinpoint the aspects of the different regulations as they apply to raw materials, packaging, advertising, distribution, and we can also potentially look to include them in our own regulations as we move forward with the new bill. The 5 markets that were highlighted as good markets to look at based on a very specific filtering process were Brazil, Europe, Australia, Nigeria, and Morocco. And some of the highlights of those findings across those markets was basically that, yes, raw materials are more highly regulated than the products themselves. Facility registration is definitely something that is used globally, and that is through inspections, some of which are done by government and some of which are outsourced to third parties. Developed markets have got more detailed specifications in terms of their equipment and process, but product registration still remains an aspect in some of the more developing markets. Not so much in the developed markets, though they do sometimes use product registration when it comes to imported products, which was quite interesting. It's very common for pet food to be regulated under a Department of Agriculture or similar. Labeling across the board is quite highly regulated, and advertising is generally regulated within another body. And also a lot of self-regulation in the advertising space was found. There were no specific pet food advertising regulations that were found across those 5 markets. So really, if we look at that, and I think it was a very valuable exercise, we will still come to make more use of the outcomes of that exercise. But we can confirm that pet food regulated under agriculture and other territories, we can check that we're on the right path. They're doing away with the product registration, we're on the right path with that. Raw material registration still remains an aspect of the regulatory framework. Facility licensing is definitely the way to go, and allowance for assignees certainly seems that is something that we should also keep within our bill, which is where we are currently with the draft. So that's just an overview really to give you some feedback on that benchmarking process. We'll move on then to our next priority, which is looking at the regulatory space and lobbying to improve our current situation, as well as clearly defining our future framework. So I'm going to hand over to Nomfundo for this section, and I'll see you in a little bit.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope I'm tall enough for that. All right, today I'm just going to take you through a summary of, specifically on the legislation. As you guys can see on our priorities that we had last year, so over the last year, we've looked at really trying to look at continuing to improve the current situation that we have, but also really trying to clearly define the future framework that we want to see with regards to our work stream. All right, if you look at the two priorities that we had, the first one under continuing to improve the current situation, we had a few topics that were under there where we had registration backlog, so we've been looking at that for the past year. We've also been looking at the draft regulations that are currently happening at Act 36, and then there was also SAFE, where we were looking at sort of the core issues that were identified in the gap analysis by that forum. So under the continuing of improving the current situation, under registration backlog, what we've tried to do as PFI is we've actually been having bi-weekly meetings with the Act 36 admin just to try and follow up on any outstanding applications that our members bring forward. So when we have our sort of regular quarterly meetings with Act 36, we always know where exactly they are with the technical evaluations, where they are with regards to admin side. So if there's anything that's outside of that range, we try to follow up if a member brings it up, and we sort of have a chat with the admin, and they've actually been really, really collaborative in that manner. Seeing me coming in there, it's not like a block, you know, from them. They're very open, and we're able to see and check where any issues might be, because sometimes issues may be on our member's side, sometimes something has been, you know, lost somewhere. We try to figure that out. So that's been really, really effective from the admin team as well. All right, and then we've also then looked at continuous activity through the liaison working group. I must say this group really works very well. We meet on a quarterly basis, but it's a chance for us to actually sit together with DELRAD team, as well as AFMA. We discuss any issues that we have, especially on backlog. You guys know it's been quite a big issue for our members. So we sit together, and it's really a solution-driven working group. We try to see what are the problems, how can we look at, you know, solving that, any low-hanging fruit, what can we do, discuss regulations that are coming up. So we've actually had a chance to really, really sit with DELRAD to really look at that. So I think in that working group, it's been quite effective for the last year. But of course, on certain projects, we do see that a bit of progress is a bit slow, especially on the regulations, because remember, there is now the backlog that's on one hand, but they also have the draft regulations that they need to work on, and capacity has been quite limited for a while. So we had to sort of see where our priorities lie. All right, and then when you look at under SAFE, you know, there were some core issues that came out of the gap analysis, and I think you'll find that with DELRAD, they've been quite open to sort of say, okay, we know there's a backlog, there's issues on regulations not moving forward, but, you know, they were able to say, come forward, bring forward any bold sort of solutions. So as PFI, we've been quite bold in sort of submitting some sort of proposals on technical amendments to try and move the backlog ahead. But of course, we cannot say all of that will be accepted. We're still waiting for feedback from DELRAD to have to review properly and see what is within the law for them to do. And then we can take it from there, because we're trying to really deal as much as we can with the backlog issues. All right, and then also what we've also done is, as PFI, we appointed a resource to sort of stay at Act 36. That's Mrs. Sonto Mlambo, to really try help with increasing the capacity, because last year, you guys will remember, we were sort of saying capacity was quite an issue currently at DELRAD. So we were trying to see a solution that we could bring in, and we were glad that we were able to sort of bring in Sonto to come in as well, which I think has really, really helped with increasing capacity. But DELRAD has also increased the capacity on that side, and I'm coming to that as well. All right, if we move to the second priority, which was really clearly defining the future framework, and that comes down to our legislation, that's the bill, as well as the future regulations. So on the feed and pet food bill, a task team was formed, which we sort of let you guys know last year that a task team was formed, but we did encounter quite a loss of a critical resource, someone that was sort of planned to do much of the work at that time, looking at the commentary, so we've lost that resource. So we had to re-look and see how we can sort of close that gap. So I think because of that lack of capacity, which affected the task team's ability to really move forward. But also remember, we also have the backlog that's sitting there. So we're trying to look at legislation, but also trying to deal with the backlog. And it's the same group of people that we're expecting them to sort of deal with both issues. So we really had to try and really prioritize as much as we can as a team. All right, and then if we look at future regulations, I think we have, as PFI, while we're waiting on the task team to move forward, we've decided as PFI to sort of form our own working groups where we decided to relook at the SABS standards, because remember in the future framework, we're hoping to be able to refer to these standards in that framework. So we decided to be proactive and we started working on those two standards. We've already reviewed them and they're going to go through, of course, another review at the SABS properly, which then includes all the stakeholders that are involved at 36 as well as other stakeholders. So we've decided to be proactive in that manner. We've been working on that for the last couple of months. All right, and then there's another proposal that was presented to the board to try and obtain an external source to sort of assist with the bill, to try and get it to completion as fast as possible. That has been proposed, but currently it's being sense-checked. We need to see if it's the right move. We've proposed it, but we're still having a look at that. And once we sort of know, I think everybody will know then on the way forward on that. And then just a little bit of progress is that we have received some commentary from Act 36. So these are all the comments that came back on the bill, I think about a year back. 3 or 4 years back, yeah. So there's some comments that came back from different stakeholders, so we all had to review that as a task team. So we've received those comments, and we're currently trying to work on reviewing them and seeing the way forward for the bill. All right, we thought it would be good to just give the members a bit of a report on SONTO as an additional source that we've sort of put at Act 36. Just a bit of background. SONTO was then offered a position by PFI in the role of a senior administrative clerk at that time, but she started at Delred in April this year. But I think Delred was able to sort of look at their priorities and capacity issues, and based on her qualifications as well, they deemed that it was best that she join the technical team. So she was then appointed as a scientist technician. So she was currently then working with the technical team as opposed to the admin team. All right, just a bit of a progress report for her. She's been at Delred for 5 months now at the end of August. Remember, it's a 6-month fixed contract that's supposed to end at the end of September. So she's been there for 5 months, and this is just a breakdown on her stats for the 5 months. We worked with Delred to try come up with KPIs for her that Delred was able to drive because they know their process better. So they were able to put some KPIs for her, and then we wanted to just keep track of where she is based on those KPIs. All right, as you can see, I think from April up until August, I'm not going to go into detail, but we're able to see the detail of how many applications she's worked on, she's recommended, and how many we wanted to see the on hold, because that's important. Because remember, applications are on hold, it means that's something that's outstanding from our side, the member side. And you know, the TAs will put it aside, they'll send out a letter, they're waiting. So we wanted to see, because that determines also the quality of our submissions. If there's quite a huge number of on holds, it means the quality that's going in maybe is not as great, or we're not substantiating as much as we should. So it was good to actually get that number so we can try and work on that as members. All right, so you can see, I think by the end of the 5 months, she had sort of completed about 778 applications. I'll go into a little bit of detail just to show you here. You'll see she did new registrations and she also did amendments. And you'll see she did more amendments because Act 36 gets more submissions of amendments than new registrations, all right? So that's where she covered quite a lot. And you'll see in the green, that's her KPIs that were set. And in the gray, that's what she achieved. So for new registrations, she had, I think, KPI of 30, because remember, it takes a longer time to evaluate new registrations than it does amendments. So that KPI was a bit less. So, but we can see that she did exceed that KPI. And then on the amendments, she had about 250 set, but she completed about 719, which you can see that she really exceeded it, and I think it was a positive impact to the team. All All right, and then just a little bit more on that progress report. I think SONTA has been quite a valuable tool, especially in collaboration with the team at Act 36, especially Sim Tembile, because she was working under Sim Tembile, who's the technical advisor there. So I think in that collaboration, it has led to quite a bit of knowledge sharing between DELRAD and PFI, because I was able to sort of had some meetings with Sim Tembile just to align and make sure that SONTA is on the right track. And, you know, I think from that knowledge sharing, it really, really helped us because we were able to even draft, you know, a list of common issues that they were experiencing from some of the dossiers that our members are submitting. Like, for instance, they sort of were able to tell us some members are not substantiating, you know, when they're submitting, which is quite important. You know, sometimes nutrients that should be declared are sometimes not included, you know, so we probably coming there I'm making a big hoo-ha about an outstanding product, but my member hasn't submitted the stuff that's supposed to be in there. So we were able to get that list, quite a list, and we were able then to take that and share it with the members to sort of say, to better our quality and to move your product through the process in a more efficient manner, please make sure that these issues are covered in your submission. So I think that knowledge sharing from the team at Act 36 was really, really great. All right, and then I think just some feedback that we got from DELRAD, because it was important for us to touch base with DELRAD just to make sure that SONTA being there, how is she progressing, what is the impact to the team? And I think these were just some of the words that we got, that she's you know, a pleasure to work with, and she's someone who's really making a tremendous impact and willing to learn. I got that she was really, really willing to learn and open to learning, which was really, really great. So I think it shows that she's been a really, really positive impact in the team. Right, and I think, yeah, in conclusion is that, yeah, she's added value to Act 36 and has a positive impact on the registration process. All right, I wanted to show this slide because Act 36 works on, as a working group, they do stats for us that we look at on a quarterly basis, and they did this slide, which was really, really great, where they sort of showed us, you know, a summary of applications from 2019 all the way up to current date. You know, it gives us a better view of what has been happening. So for instance, you'll see on the gray, all the columns in gray is everything that's been outstanding. So you guys can see that it was really, really, the trend was going up. You know, there's quite a lot of outstanding applications. But if you look at what is completed, which is the orange, and that's what we're trying to look at, you know. And you guys will see that the highest backlog that we had was in January 2023, with that 2,328 at the top. I think we were all very concerned. Act 36 was also concerned, so we really had a lot of discussions on how we can solve that. And I think that's where it came with the solution of then trying to also bring in SONTA to come and assist, all right? And then you'll see that the July 2023 figure is actually the lowest we have seen, and this is since January 2021. So that 1,552 is showing us that from that 2,328, we've gone all the way down to 1,552. So you can see that that impact of them actually adding SONTA, but also adding a new TA in there as well, has really, really impacted the work there. Right, and then you'll see, I think the last time we had over 1,000 applications completed was in July 2019, and we actually, at this reporting period, they completed 1,119. And to say, we were so excited. I know maybe people might not think, but we were very excited. We were looking at, I mean, they were doing about 700, you know, at some reporting period, but this period they really, really worked hard. And I think we really had to give it to Act 36 for that period because they put in a lot of work. They got the new TA to come in. Dr. Tabisa also joined, SONTA joined, and I think the team really focused on that. And that's why I think we were willing to say prioritizing them working on the backlog more than the other priorities, which was okay, because at the end of the day, for you guys, what matters is, can we get our things back as fast as possible? So that's what they were focusing on, and I think on this period, they were outstanding for me. All right, so just a little bit, just to show you guys in graph form, with regards to applications received. So you can see, at Act 36, most applications under farm feeds and pet foods that are received are pet food. I think 60%, over 60% is pet food, more than farm feeds. So it's quite a lot. And you'll see that most of the time, they were getting about 777 applications received going in. Remember, it goes into the same admin block. So inbound and outbound, same sort of people, all right? So it's going into that, but we see that it leveled out quite a bit in this period with that 503. And I think you guys remember, I think post-COVID, there was a huge influx of applications. So they received a lot. And that's why you'll see in the other slide, it will seem like there's so many outstanding applications, but it's because we were also submitting quite a lot. So it was taking a bit of time to go through the process. But I think now with our submissions, that has reduced a little bit. And I think also, we also got some members that were saying, you know, we're also not sort of submitting as much as we normally do, just to give them time as well to also work through what is currently in the system. All right, when we look at completed registrations, you can see, I think immediately when you go to the 267, that was quite low in the reporting period of November to January 2023. But I think, let me go there, it should that. Perfect. I think there we were quite concerned of like, how could they, you know, complete 267 base? If you go back to the other August, October, which was 837, but I think we all know November to January, it's a holiday period, and quite a few of the TAs were on holiday. I think one of the TA was also on like a sabbatical, so there was those kind of challenges that were happening at Act 36 at that time. But then you can see after that, it went back up to 790. And of course now the one that we were very happy about, the 1,119, which you can see then is the positive impact of the new TA that they've got, Dr. Tabisa, as well as the PFI resource, but also I think as the intern as well that they've had there as well, I think has really contributed positively. All right, on the outstanding, which is also quite important, you see the trend, it's sort of going down, which we really, really love. We would love that 1,552 to drop even lower, and we hope that we will see this trend carrying on for the next reporting period as well. All right, due to the impact. Perfect. And I wanted to show this backlog overview over 12 months. With this trend, I think you can see with the yellow, that's what's outstanding, so that's still at Act 36, and then with the gray, it's what's completed, and that's what we want as members. And you can see that they're really trying to, now they're emerging. We really want the completed applications to go up more, so we're trying to work in collaboration with Act 36 to try to keep this trend going. And I think this last period, they really, really did a lot to try and make this trend work in a positive manner. So we are hoping that in future, we're going to keep this trend moving forward. All right, just to have a look at where we were 24 months, a year ago, and then currently. So 24 months, they had about 1,740 applications that were outstanding. They were looking at 9 months to review new applications. They were looking at 6 months for amendments. 12 months ago, that increased to 1,990 applications, which was quite concerning. But you could see then with evaluations of new registrations, that's when we started going into a range last year, because they Act 36 sort of made the solution to try to bring in external TAs. So we were able to work off a range now, because remember, you might find that the internal TAs are working on, say, October, but the external TAs are now working on November and December. So that's why we wanted to work it off a range to make sure that we know exactly where they were. So that was 12 months ago. But I think what's important to look at currently, we've dropped that now. We have about 1,552 applications that are still remaining. But I think what's important to look at the new applications. They are currently evaluating August to November 2022. So we're looking at a 9 to 12 months period in that. So we always ask members to sort of check if you have anything that's outstanding that's before August that you haven't received, please let Dom and I know. But I think what's also amazing that they've focused quite a lot on amendments, and you can see that that has dropped now. They're currently working on March to May 2023, and that has dropped to 3 months to 5 months to evaluate those amendments and minor. So for me, that is outstanding, because that's the majority of applications that they get, and they're really, really focused on that, and that has dropped quite a bit. So if you have anything that's submitted outside of that period, please let us know, and that what we'll do is with our bi-weekly meetings with the admin, we just follow up for you guys and check and see where everything is. All right, 12 months ago, where we were on capacity, remember Tebogo had left and she hadn't been replaced yet, but we also lost Mr. Lindinkosi, who was the admin supervisor last year. Inbound and outbound were restructured. And then we also seemed to sort of say the morale seemed higher, but output still remained a bit low, I think based from what we were seeing. But they returned to full capacity late last year, but capacity still remained it was quite an issue, I think. So capacity issues addressed through the external advisors, so they decided to get the external TAs to try and address the capacity issue. All right, but they also then wanted to replace the TA and also replace the supervisor. So currently what we have is we have now the appointment of Dr. Kabisa, who's the new technical advisor in the team. She also started at around the same time as Sonto, which was really, really great because they were able to go through the process together with Simtembilia. So I think that has really, really helped. But they've also then appointed Ms. Elelwani to be the new admin supervisor. She started now in May 2023. So I think capacity issues have in essence been covered over the last few months by Act 36. All right, and then as PFI, then we also then appointed that resource to also help with the capacity issue. But remember, it is a fixed term, 6 months, okay? And I think the morale is quite higher now. I think even in our working groups, I think the morale is very high when we're working together, especially when you look at the last quarter. The output of the last quarter has been really, really great, which proves that I think the addition of capacity has really helped in that. All right, and then largely addressed, and then focus now to shift to other areas of need. I think we are looking at saying now let's shift to the draft regulations, the bill, but remember we still have that bit of the backlog there. So they have a lot of balls that they're juggling, and they're trying to see how they can manage that. All right, just on the current scenario, we've all had load shedding that's still persisting, but luckily that doesn't affect DALRAD, which is really great for us. I think communication channels have been more effective in the last year. I really must say, I think when we're calling and sort of bothering them or coming up to the offices, they really are welcoming and they're open. They're like, what do you need? You know, what's happening, you know? So I think communications have been quite well. I think even with the members, we haven't heard members sort of complaining that much, so which is really great. I think the communication channels, even with the TAs, has opened up quite well, which I think we really, really appreciate. I think the bi-weekly meetings have really helped quite a lot with Act 36. And the external TAs still continue to feature, which is really great, and offering the extra hands in the processing of applications. All right, what we're looking forward to. Remember I showed you the graph where we want to see the completed applications, you know, being higher than what is submitted. But it's a good trend. We're trying to keep that trend. But what is happening now is we will have a decrease in capacity again. For instance, Sonto, who is the resource, is now on maternity leave. So we are sort of losing that resource for a bit. But also the intern that was there for the last 2 years now is also leaving at the end of September. So the impact, positive impact we were seeing, we could also now, you know, it could go down again, you know. So it's something that we had to look at and discuss, all right? So as I think we discussed with the board, to sort of look at this and say, maybe then an idea is to look at renewing Sonto's contract. Also wanted to look at maybe funding a further 6 months contract for the intern. And also then a possibility of working through AgriSeta to see if there's a possibility of appointing more interns through AgriSeta. So we're trying to be, look at solutions for what is currently happening now. All right, and then another thing to look forward to is we've said there was a need for an online submission portal, which we really would love to have. So I think to give you some feedback, DALRAD has finalized an online working system for another work stream, which is really good. So I do know that now momentum is moving to the farm feed and pet food work stream, and they should be giving us a bit more feedback on a possible online system for us as well. All right, and then we'll move more into the compliance matters. Right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, Nomfundo. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next priority for the year, which was becoming more active in the matters of non-compliance. It's definitely been a journey, I can tell you that, but we also have some very positive news to bring forward today about the Inspectorate. We've had some really positive engagements with them the last couple of quarters. We've been advised that all the vehicles that they were waiting for a very long time to receive, they've received them all, and we've really seen the impact of that. We have seen quarterly objectives, most of them being met, a lot of them even being exceeded, and it's been a very long time since we've actually seen that in their report back to us. So that's very positive. We've also taken up more regular engagements with the inspectors themselves, so we are building relationships there. We are being able to put a little bit more pressure in terms of the specific complaints that have been put forward, as well as just allowing for almost a little bit more education in terms of the pet food industry specific issues that we are dealing with. And through those engagements, they are looking at a new category in terms of where they are inspecting. That includes trial sites, but just to remind you, of course, that this inspectorate is not only specific to pet food and animal feed. It also looks at agric remedies and fertilizers and pest controls and all of that. So this applies to all of the sectors that they are looking after, but certainly will also benefit the pet food industry. We also put in a formal request after going into the field ourselves and doing a review of the market. We could get an idea of what we believed was on shelf that should be registered but was not. And so we've also asked that additional inspections on a more regular basis are also done in the retail sector. We've had agreement about that, but that starts very much in the co-ops. We'll get that right, and then we can also start looking at the different retail sectors as well, that where pet food is sold. A new senior administrator has also been appointed. That is Motlatso Malachi. She's really great. She's been there for, I think, about 3 months now. It's been great actually meeting her. The reports that we're getting are also of a higher quality. So we're really making some progress on this front as well as for Chief Agricultural Inspector posts being advertised that they're looking to fill. So we can also expect increased capacity from that front as well. In dealing with the board, we basically looked at the issues that we believe are of non-compliance in the retail sector, and we devised a kind of plan. We were going to look at 3 specific areas that we would address, working with Dalrod specifically, looking at the retail sector, and then of course looking at the consumers. We've had a number of engagements with the Inspectorate as well as with the technical advisors. There's been agreement that we could work together to formulate training of some sort that we could then work with different bodies to reach the retail sector on, as we believe that there may also be a lot of education needed to ensure that everybody is on the same page, the requirements for pet food sales, the requirement for product to be registered, which treat products should be registered, which should not. But I must say that need for understanding spans across the board. It's not only in the retail sector, even within the industry itself. There are grey areas within our regulations, and I think that there are areas that are misunderstood. So I have engaged with the technical advisor. We agree that we need to maybe have a little bit more formalized an understanding of what definitely constitutes a nutritional claim and what does not, so that it is a lot easier for us to pinpoint where there is a product that is non-compliant. We have lobbied already with the proposed amendments in our regulations to have the regulation be more clear-cut and rather specify that any treat that has a nutritional value requires registration, as opposed to how it stands now, where there is a loophole, where it is a grey area and it's a little bit murky. So really what we need, understanding that this misunderstanding of the regulations spans across the board, is we need to rather get to a place where those regulations are published. Then we know there is no area for debate, and that is really when we need to then focus on the retail sector and the consumer education. So we've got a number of aspects that have already been completed. We're still working on those in terms of the non-compliance. We still work very closely with the Inspectorate, as well as with industry in terms of laying formal complaints when there are issues in the industry. But this is really where we are stuck at the moment, and we think that the most value that we will get from this is that we will have better impact when the regulations are clear-cut, that we can actually sit with the retail sector and say, here it is, this point in the regulations states categorically that anything with a nutritional value needs to be registered, yet there are products on your shelf that are not. And so that's what we're really focusing on now, but we're not letting any of the other aspects go. We are formalizing relationships with the likes of SAVA. We are engaging with CGCSA so that we can also have a direct route to retail and also enable us to proceed with that educational campaign when we are ready to do so. So you may remember this slide from last year. Nothing has really changed here. We're still asking very much for industry support. Like I mentioned, we are doing more regular surveys of the retail sector ourselves. We are working with the inspectorate. We also have a number of members, and I would like to really extend a very hearty thank you to our members who work with us. There is testing that is being done within the industry itself, and when there are issues with food, it is highlighted to us, and we are in a great position now where we have developed these relationships with the inspectors that we can really delve into that and look specifically where there are areas of concern with regards to safety, nutritional content of the food, and we're working very well. What I wanted to highlight here is that I think that there can be a feeling of being disheartened when you look in the retail sector and we're sitting here waiting for our registration to come through. It's a year or maybe a year and a half and you're still waiting and you see products on shelf that you believe actually should be registered but are not. And the recourse for those products is not always very clear. But I can assure you that the recourse, it's there and it is happening and it is varied depending on what the issue is. As examples of what has happened, not only within pet food, and this again extends to other sectors as well that are under the regulation of Act 36 and that same inspectorate, but there are a number of actions that have been taken against products that are non-compliant, such as registrations being cancelled, matters are referred to the SAPS and NPA, charge sheets are drawn up, some of these cases actually do make it to court. Admission of guilt fines are possible, and yes, they are often low, but the inspectorate is now also working in tandem with the Fines Adjustment Act to apply those fines to multiple invoices as opposed to just one singular fine. It's also possible that the asset forfeiture unit may come in and claim the profit of a non-compliant product that has been sold. Orders for destruction of non-compliant food have been made, as well as the need for proof of that destruction being necessitated from the, what's the word? Not the complainant, no, the person who's guilty of, the guilty party, let's say that, okay. Just recently, a brand was actually told to cease sales and also to recall all the product off the shelf that was found to be non-compliant. And it is also possible that the inspectorate may recommend that all manufacturing actually be stopped in a facility that they find non-compliant. So do not be disheartened. Let's work on this together. Please feel free, if you do not want to make a complaint directly, you can bring it through me. We also do have an anonymous portal that you can use. There's always a link in our newsletter, so you can just click on that and you can give me the details that way, and we will work through it. This is also another slide from last year, and we have made some steps, we've made some steps of progress, but we are not actually anywhere defined, unfortunately, when it comes to the matter of CBD. It is a global issue. We are not the only ones struggling with CBD ending up in pet food. We've got still the same situation where Act 36 technically cannot regulate a medicine, and CBD and THC and all of that is specified as being a medicinal product and so should be regulated under Act 101 and with SAHPRA. But they have also extended an exception clause that was published in 2019, and so there is also a grey area in this space. In trying to clarify it, we also have engaged with the registrar. There was a consideration of possibly having CBD at a certain limit allowed in pet food. But of course, because as the PFI, one of our values is really that we stand for the safety of nutrition, we want to be sure that it is the right move to make. And the board is therefore requesting that we first find the scientific research to support the safe use of CBD in pet food. And quite frankly, as far as I have been able to find, as far as our board has been able to find, there is no such thing yet. There's no peer-reviewed studies. We have advised the registrar that we are looking for same so that we can make an educated decision whether we support or not support the proposal. But we are still looking, and I have reached out to a number of different brands and companies that use CBD in products, and it's not forthcoming. There was, in the last few months, research that was published, the initial stages of it, where CBD was used in a supplement for dogs over an extended period, but that research has not actually been peer-reviewed yet, so perhaps we are on our way to making strides in terms of finding that research to support this, but we're not there yet. So where we stand right now is we're still in a bit of a murky area, we're still in a grey area. I am in the process of trying to also secure time with SAHPRA so that we can try and demystify whether or not their exemption was intended to include pet food. I can imagine not, being that it's not medicinal, but I stand to be corrected. And so I'm hoping that I will be able to get through to them and also perhaps even have a meeting between the two departments, with thanks to some of our members who have actually given me additional contact details at SAHPRA so that I can try and make progress with that. Right, so just looking then also at our market data project and some marketing that took place in the last 12 months. You'll remember last year, AskD, Diane from AskD came and presented. We wanted to assist in trying to get a project off the ground where members and non-members alike could participate through AskD, providing their information, and they would then get data back. It's still ongoing, but it has not taken off. Although there was a lot of interest leaving the room that day, and there was a lot of interest in the months that followed, it is very much a case of one brand being on board, provided another brand is on board. And when that brand is not on board, then the next brand opts out again. And then, so it's been this kind of like tag team effect for quite a while. And so we're nowhere with that, if I'm honest. But what we did try and do as the PFI in the interim is I just put out a very informal survey at the beginning of the year, thanks to those who participated. We shared the results of what that, the research that came back. By no means is it anything that you could put your money on, but I'm sure it was of interest. It was probably nice to know that you're not alone in the difficulties and frustrations that you're dealing with. It is something that we'd like to do at least once a year. The more participation we get, the more reliable the output, obviously. So I would like to encourage our members to please participate. Within our membership, we expect that we've got about 80% of the market, and if we had everybody participating, that would really be something reliable and something that we could use, not only that you could use, but also the PFI could use, because we are desperate for statistics, and I'll get to why a little bit later. But really, in trying to bolster the PFI's name in different spheres, we need data to really be able to motivate for governmental attention in different areas. And so that would really assist us there. In terms of media, we've had a little bit of interest from a global scale. I have contributed to a number of articles that were published in Pets International and petfoodindustry.com. The links were included in the chairman's report if anybody is interested. So it was nice to also have some exposure there. This is something else in addition to what we had highlighted as our priorities for the year. The PFI is trying to really become more active in trade facilitation. A call to members was put out earlier this year. We got a little bit of interest back from our members. There was a small need for us to really focus on trade facilitation. The committee was formed. It had 6 persons from 5 different PFI member companies. That was both from ordinary and affiliate members. It was 3 suppliers and 2 manufacturers. Within that committee, while we were still new and excited, I prepared a survey. We did a survey, and really what came out of that survey is really that each individual company obviously has its own strategy, and they are not necessarily even the same markets that each company is looking at, and the difficulties and the obstacles are unique. But certainly it seemed that export was more of a priority than import, and together we kind of agreed that perhaps Africa and Europe were where we should be focusing. But by the time we got to our second meeting, we'd already had 2 companies resign from the committee, and it was myself and one other person that met. And not that there's anything wrong with that, I think it just indicates that it may not be an immediate need from the industry, and so what we will always be is open and remain available to our members to assist in individual matters where we are able. And instead, what I am doing is really trying to focus on the biggest hurdle that came out of this exercise, and that is the fact that pet food, though governed and defined as an agricultural product, is certainly not top of mind when one speaks of agriculture, and that is across the board. So I've really been working quite hard to make the right connections. I've been leveraging our membership with AgBiz quite a lot, but I'm trying to get pet food in everybody's face so that we become top of mind when one speaks about agriculture, and when there are trade negotiations that are happening and they are of an agricultural nature, that pet food is not forgotten. I think it's important that the PFI finds its place in these discussions, has a seat at the table, and that's what I'm really working on. So it's a lot of trial and error, if I'm honest. It's not an area that is something that I've got experience in, so I'm learning as I go, but I am meeting with any and every organization or forum that I can possibly think or that somebody recommends me to do. Some of it is positive, some of it actually leads nowhere. But so far we have also been accepted on the Agricultural Trade Forum, which is great. And also Wandile Siklobo from AgBiz, who will be joining us a little bit later. He is the chief economist for AgBiz, but he is also an advisor to the minister. He sits on the BRICS advisory committee, and him and I are working quite closely together, and he completely sees value in getting pet food into these discussions, and so I'm going to hound him quite a lot. But this is really where it comes down to the advice that I've had from multiple sources is do not even get in front of the minister to talk about trade facilitation unless you can tell the statistics of your industry. And that's why it is so important. One of the priorities leaving this room for me is to develop a survey, which Wandile and I have spoken about. There's even possibility of us engaging with the Competition Commission to ensure that everything is above board. There will be nothing to worry about. We will not ask questions that we should not ask to get data that is competitively sensitive. But if you could please participate in that, just to enable us even to get pet food top of mind in these spaces. Right, and Johan mentioned that this year the PFI attended the GATFA conference. It took place in Brussels in Belgium. It was truly a wonderful experience. I was quite taken aback by the interest that the delegates had in South Africa, and I was very fortunate to be able to also provide a report back on South Africa, which did a lot to allay concerns from many other global industries. These are the countries that were present, that participated. If you are accessing our newsletter, each of them had done a poster with some interesting statistics, some more than others, but about their specific region. It was included in one of our newsletters. If you didn't receive it, please let me know. I'll be happy to forward it to you. Just pop me an email. In the technical congress part of the event, we had presentations that were given to us by the World Trade Organization, the World Organization for Animal Health, the International Feed Industry Federation, and the World Renderers Organization on varying topics which are listed there. But it was really very interesting. And more than anything, it was great to be in a room with global partners that are, in a lot of ways, actually experiencing a lot of what we are experiencing. And of course, we will always have our uniquely South African challenges, but many of the challenges are actually shared globally. And I've just put a few highlights here from the different presentations that were given by the different regions, and I thought these of particular interest to me was firstly that our brand strategy research that we commissioned, a lot of what they presented to us was very much confirmed by at least the countries that overlapped. In Australia, they're also dealing very much with issues with CBD and the ambiguity of their regulations, as well as trying to define different terms. And an example they gave was human grade, and that's something that we also deal with a lot. In Canada, they also have got, like our EPR regulations to deal with a circular environment and removal of plastics from the system. They're really struggling to comply with those regulations. They're also attempting to improve their relationships with their governmental bodies, and they're struggling a lot to export to China. On the subject of China, what they presented was also very interesting, and I think this is no surprise to me, but companies live and die within a day, depending on what social media is saying about them. They said they've seen a number of brands that have had like one bad experience, and that has ruined them. They also said that the market is completely inundated. They have got over 1,000 brands of pet foods in China. 20% die within a year, but another 20% increase. And I think that that may also have something to do with the difficulties of exporting to China because they are so saturated already. Europe highlighted that they really do need additional codes to even their playing field, and often I hear that, you know, South Africa has an uneven playing field because of our murky regulations. Japan, though not similar to us, but I thought this very interesting, is they're actually dealing with the issue of the pet population declining, and so they're first actually having to promote pet ownership before they can actually even look to promote specific pet foods. New Zealand being very highly regulated, but without a product registration, they also are struggling with the regulation of claims. And then the US, with their dual regulatory system, they really are saying that they need to have regulatory reform of their own and bring the two into alignment. And so that's a big project that they're working on to get the states and and to modernize those requirements across the states and the entire country. Sure, are we here already? Okay. I think we're doing quite well for time. You may have the longest break you've ever had at an event. So this really is just a summary of what we have already spoken about, as well as what was highlighted in Johan's chairman's report. I won't spend too much time on it, but I think that some of the wins that we've experienced, not only as the PFI, but as an industry and matters that affect us, firstly, further growth of our office. I think we've seen quite clearly that having additional hands at Act 36 has certainly helped to alleviate the backlog. And I really do also believe that it has assisted us in deepening our bond with Act 36 as well. You know, there is limitations, there are moratoriums that are placed on increasing capacity, and for industry to come in and to really assist where the need is identified, I think that that goes a long way to formalizing where we want to go with the department. In terms of our legislation, yes, the feed bill is not where we were hoping last year. We stood here and we were like, we've got the task team and we are going to get this bill through in the next year, and we're not there. But we are looking at options to try and get there quicker. We have made progress as PFI on our own with developing or reviewing our standards, as well as having reviewed the 5 international markets. That gives us a good idea of what we believe should be included in the regulations when we get there. We've got the commentary now, which we had waited quite a while for, so we are now able to at least review that commentary and that we can highlight. Mr. Madzunga often talks about a number of areas that need to be defined, assignees being one of them, and those are really the obstacles that are holding the bill back. Now we are really able to address those and move forward, I believe. And then in terms of the regulations, although they are delayed in being published, the opportunity to put in a bold request, we at least had that opportunity to do. We are excited, Mr. Madzunga and Simtembile, to hear what you feel about that bold request. But we are hoping that we can potentially have some amendments, some technical amendments submitted for noting only, and that a company can at least proceed. So we're waiting for feedback on that. And of course, once our backlog is better under control to a point where the team also feels comfortable, they will be shifting their focus onto the regulations, and that will also assist in terms of the applications that are going in now under the current Act, because it does also demystify some of those murky areas. And then also, as Nomfundo highlighted, to please continue to use her if you do have issues of applications that are long outside of what they are working on. It's really working quite well, and I think that we've cleared quite a lot out of the system. And in instances, you know, we are all human. We've even found certificates sitting in a file that looked to be lost, but actually it was there, and it was because of the collaboration between the PFI and Act 36 that we were able to resolve those issues. Collaboration on the inspectorate side and matters of non-compliance, that will continue. We will just have to be a lot more focused in terms of the areas that we believe are 100% as defined in the regulations non-compliant as this area of uncertainty. It doesn't help in the capacity issues that the inspectorate has as well, investigating matters that are not actually problems. The trade facilitation, we will continue with that, and we will continue to broaden our network, as well as ensuring that pet food is sitting at the necessary tables. With thanks to our members, we've really had a very, very great year in terms of participation on our committees. The Nutritional Standards Committee, I think, is bigger than it's ever been. In terms of the input that we're getting from our members, it's really phenomenal. The engagement, those willing to step forward and join another working group that's specifically looking at the bill. Those who also joined the Trade Facilitation Committee, which unfortunately did not take off, but still, of the membership of the ARB, the likes of publications would pull the advertising, the radios would pull the advertising because they are members of the ARB and need to abide by those rulings. Sorry, just to clarify that for you. We've had great growth from a PFI perspective. We've got 4 new members, very excited to say 4 ordinary new members and 1 new affiliate member. Vigo Pro, Lutron Feeds, The Harvest Table, and Nestle from our ordinary membership, and Evonik, who's also a sponsor here today. So welcome to all of you. Unfortunately, we did also lose a number of members. There seems to have been a lot of movement in terms of ownership this year, and about 6 of the members that we've lost have, I think about 4 or 5 of them have actually been to a change of ownership. But still, we will be ending the year with a healthy bank balance. And that is what enables us to consider potentially the proposal that's on the table in terms of the feed bill. But that bank balance has been dwindling over the last few years. And that is why today we are asking for an increase of 7% on our membership fees, as Johan detailed earlier. Right, so I'm back to this slide, but really just to say that our priorities, as you've heard today, although we have made some progress, we're not where we need to be, and so our priorities do not really change looking forward to the next 12 months. We do not need to project manage the benchmarking study, of course, that is done, and instead we bring in this aspect of trade facilitation. And I've just kind of put through our priorities in these different aspects. Under trade facilitation, the membership survey, which I want to get onto quite quickly, if you could please participate with that. The building of relationships will continue. We'll continue to engage the different trade associations, and of course, where members have their individual needs or requirements, to please, I encourage you to come forward. We are maintaining momentum with the backlog, as Nomfundo has detailed, that we are wanting to extend Sonto's contract so that we do not lose the momentum there, as well as looking at an additional intern for 6 months. And then once that backlog is under control, to shift the focus to the regulations, and then looking at reviewing the commentary that we've now received and moving the pet food, the feed and pet food bill forward. In matters of non-compliance, the lobbying for that request continues in terms of the need for registration of treats that have a nutritional value, and then we will pick up on the educational drives and the push in the retail sector. It will actually be the perfect opportunity to educate on how the regulations will have changed. And then I will maintain the activity, of course, in working directly with the inspectorate. And then our marketing will always be there, though not a focal point for us. We will never lose sight of that. And where appropriate, we will leverage on the PFI activity to build knowledge and the brand. Okay, so that is basically, in summary, our last year from the PFI's perspective. It is difficult to go into detail about every little thing that we do, and so that's not all included here, but that certainly does offer you a good view of where we have been prioritizing and working a lot. So I'm going to start by asking if anybody has any questions that you would like to direct to the PFI about what has been presented. Okay. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to direct to the registrar or his team? It's not often that we get him in a room with us, so I encourage you to take advantage. If you have a question, oh, sorry, by the way, there's those things between each two of you. You just need to lift the microphone up and push the green button, and then just remember, please, to turn off the button. Yes, Christine. We have a wish list, Christina. We have a wish list. So what I think is also important is we've got elections coming up, and with the elections also comes a new parliamentary seating that will be announced. Any bill that is sitting with Parliament at this time that is not promulgated before that happens will actually be thrown out. So we actually don't want to get our bill in before that new, the elections and the new parliamentary seating has been done. In the proposal that we're looking at, which comes at a cost, with external support, the ideal timeline would be to have that bill address the commentary that has been received and have that ready before the elections so that as soon as that parliamentary seating has been announced and we can submit, we do submit. It's then out of our hands in terms of how long it will take. But like we said, we are sense checking that proposal because there is some misalignment in terms of the parties that are affected by it, about the exact need and the cost of it. In principle, the board has shown an appetite to put funding behind this so that we can move it along, but we of course need to ensure that it is the right thing to do and that the funds are being used wisely. And so where we are right now is that our priority is to move the bill forward, definitely, but secondly, to ensure that the PFI funds, because we do not have a massive bank balance, not by any means, in fact, we do not even have a bank balance that will see us through a year again in terms of our annual expenses, which is, I think, where we have been previously. But we need to ensure that, you know, those two objectives marry. So that's the ideal timeline. Mr. Madzunga, would you like to add anything to that?
Thank you, Dominic. It is very difficult to confirm timelines. What is important is for the two sectors to agree. I think from the government point of view, we have a difficulties because you seem not to be clear on certain issues. Now, when you are not clear, or there are elements that you are still disagreeing amongst yourself, we do not have confidence to place the bill to Parliament. Now, there are specific issues that I've requested both AFMA and PFI to address. We seem to have agreed on the regulatory model. In other words, licensing, raw material, that we have agreed. However, there is a sensitive sector in this country which is mainly it's around the scope of the bill. Now, the livestock industry is concerned about the scope of the bill because the bill proposed regulations extending it up to at a farm level. We have, and farmers or the livestock industry have raised issues around the cost of the implementation of the bill. We have requested that the task team that Dominic is referring to must then engage with that sector so that we can then agree on the scope of the bill. We seem to have agreed on the regulatory model. I don't think that's the issue. There is issues about assignee and the associated cost with regard to the issues of assignee. So once we have agreed on three fundamental issues, then we would then be able to put the bill into a process within government, which is, from our side, is to have our legal people work on the bill and then have the bill agreed within government work in terms of clusters. So in other words, the Department of Health, the Department of Trade and Industry, and ourselves, and other relevant government departments then need to agree on the scope of the bill. Then from there, it will then go into the Department of Justice for vetting in terms of constitutional, making sure that it meets the constitutional requirement. Now, because there are issues amongst yourselves, which we want you to resolve before we could put it to government, it will be very difficult for us to determine the time frame. So it will be important